Welcome to the With Series Potential podcast, where we share our journeys breaking into TradPub, how we're leveling up our craft to get there, and spill all the publishing tea along the way.
Hi, I'm Anna Hirsch, writing horror novels.
I'm Ivy T. Woods. I write romantic fantasy.
And I'm Zilla, writing as RJ Hawthorne, and I am also a horror author.
Welcome to episode 8 of the With Series Potential podcast. This week we are going to be talking about edit letters, but before we get into that, Anna, what have you been working on this week? Or last 2 weeks, I suppose.
Yeah, I will say this week I haven't done much because I just got back from a short vacation, but
It looks luxurious. I was so jealous.
Guys, this place was so bougie. If I get a 7-figure book deal, I'm coming back.
And you'll bring your writing friends. We'll have a little retreat.
Yeah, I'll book the whole place out. Yeah, I was in Cancun for a destination wedding. Before that, I have been working on a new project that I am nicknaming my Sporer Romance. I can't remember if I talked about this last episode or not, but I basically was just trying to think of what would be like a hooky idea to go with. I really like mushrooms. I mean, like mushroom horror. And I thought it'd be cool to do one that was romantic, because that's my thing. So it has an actual title for now, but I'm calling it Sporer Romance, and I have the first chapter drafted, so hoping to get back into that soon, once I kind of get caught up from being on vacation, and, of course, I caught something at the airport, so I'm a little bit under the weather, yada yada yada. That's what I've been working on.
I've been deep in edit land, and I'm almost
You're
done.
You're doing so great.
I can't wait to read.
Finished it's not quite like a developmental edit. There was some aspects where it was like throwing in new chapters, new scenes, but it wasn't like a complete overhaul or anything. But my big edit, I finished my big edit on Monday. I want to say Monday. And now I'm doing a line edit before I throw it out, because a bunch of my CPs, like Anna, are all gorgeous with their prose. So I can't just send out slop. Also, in general, I'm just personally of the opinion that you shouldn't be sending out a book if you can make it better on your own. And, within reason. Theoretically, I could trunk this book for 2 months and then come back to it, probably, and make it better, but
we don't have time for that.
No, and I'm gonna have that break built in while it's out with betas and stuff, so, I'll be coming back at it with new eyes when the beta feedback comes back and I go into it. But I'm giving it a line edit. My method of line editing is I do most of my writing in Google Docs, just because I'm a big device switcher person. I find that a lot easier. I actually do most of my writing on an iPad with a keyboard attachment, because I do most of my writing sitting on my bed with a baby napping on me. For this edit, I throw it into Microsoft Word and I do the read aloud feature, and I just follow along with it as I go, and anytime something doesn't flow the way I want, I go in and I fiddle with it until it does flow the way that I want. And I find it's always, for me, I kind of have to settle into a character in a POV as you go. So the beginning of it is always a little bit weirder, especially when you're introducing a new character. So I spent forever on the beginning of chapter 1, and then forever once I switched to my male main character POV.
It's just getting their quirks on the page, right? Gosh, you've got to make sure that everything is them.
Yeah, and then after that, it flows better. But there's still a few nuance edits I'm putting in. So I decided that I wanted my male main character to have a beard, so we're putting that in.
I support it.
It's Pirates at Sea.
Yes, 100%.
Just dialing up kind of the badassness of my legendary deck mistress Farrah Foreshots, small things like that, but also just making the lines flow. So I'm about 20%. It's Wednesday today. I started Monday evening. I'm about 20% of the way through. My goal is to be done by the end of March, so we're recording on the 25th, so I still have lots and lots of time. I'm hoping I should be done by then. I've made the file for my first 50 pages / 3 chapters to the people that are betaing those, and I should be sending out the other ones hopefully in the next few days, and then I guess I have to write a different book.
Oh, yes.
Okay. Actually, what I have to do is mass edit all these.
Yes.
And then write a different book.
I'm so excited to finally get this out.
It'll be fun. All right, Zilla.
For the last 2 weeks, so I have been in my little editing cave, right? I finished up my dev edit finally. I sent that in on Monday, and my agent Alex got back to me and said that we're moving on to line edits, so she's going to be doing those in the next month, and then we will be a very late spring sub. So yeah, I'm in the submission mindset right now. So I think it's easier for me to be like, what am I going to do instead of what I've been doing, because it's just been editing. But, like, I'm so excited to look at editors, and I'm so excited to read, like, debuts that have been sitting on my shelf for too long, and I just finished Tradwife, and can't stop talking about it. I swear I've talked to you guys nonstop about this book.
I put it on or Libby didn't have it, but I put the notify me tag on, so hopefully they order it when they see that I requested it.
And it like, just came out, too, so, like, I'm sure,
Yeah.
hopefully, that they do have it on the way, but, God, it's so good. And, like, everything I want to be as a writer and storyteller, so... I hope that you guys enjoy it when you read it. But yeah, that's for me. Just kind of editing Cave and starting to read and getting to the sub mindset.
Zilla, something you said made me think about it, so I just want to ask. How do you guys do with reading while you're, like, deep in the writing hole?
I definitely don't get very much reading done when I'm drafting, particularly. I have, like, a reading habit where I always read before bed, but it's usually ends up being, like, a couple pages and then I pass out. So when I'm drafting... that's typically, like, all the reading I'm doing, and I might get through one book in, like, 2 or 3 weeks. Or, realistically, I might get through a few chapters of a bunch of books in 2 or 3 weeks, because I'm a chaotic mood reader, and I don't necessarily read to, like, finish books. I'm bad at finishing things. I just like to have words in front of me.
You just like the feeling, the adventure, the vibes.
Exactly. And honestly, if I tracked all the books that I DNF, I would probably read like 150 books a year. But I don't count it because I'm like, I just...
Goodreads has a DNF shelf now.
It feels like cheating. And I'm also like, I don't want to say I DNF'd it as in I didn't like it. It's just that I am chaotic and I'm not good at reading things all the way through to the end, especially while I am doing a lot of writing stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, so when I'm drafting, I really don't, like, sit down and, like, actually just, like, read books for leisure, because I just want to use all of my time on writing.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's halfway that sacrifice and halfway, like, I want to preserve my voice.
Yes.
And I'm afraid to get too into something else.
If I read too much of an author, I definitely start to, like, feel part of their voice creeping into how I write.
Yep. I definitely noticed this, like, when I go back and read my first drafts, I noticed this a lot with my first book that I ever wrote, because I hadn't really found my own voice yet, and I would read certain chapters and go like, oh yeah, these chapters were when I was reading ACOTAR, and, like, these chapters were when I was reading, like, something that was super dense and lyrical. Like, I can literally see, and then I fix it all in post, but I can see my voice shifting. So I do use that to my advantage at times, like, if I want my prose to be a certain way, I'll have to go out of my way to read stuff that's like that and not just read my silly popcorn alien romance books or whatever.
Sometimes, this is something I've thought about, but it's never something I've actually done, is I've wanted to, like, read one book or one author while I edit one POV, and then switch to a different author to edit another POV, to, like, it's something I've thought about. It's not something I've actually done, but I feel like that would hit just a little bit.
Never considered that.
I don't use books. I use Taylor Swift, and I'm not, like, a huge Swiftie, but, like, I do enjoy, like, her lyrics most of the time. So, like I'll pick a couple of songs and be like, okay, this is the mindset I want to get into. Like, this is the vibe, and then I go and edit.
I definitely use music, too.
I have book playlists. I have a writing playlist for each book, which honestly, like, helps a lot when you have to switch between projects. Like, I found it really useful when I was editing Undying Summer, which I suppose we'll get to soon. And when I was still trying to draft at least a little bit of Sculptor every day, was switching playlists, and it actually really, really helped with that, because I just can't condition myself to think about a certain book with a certain playlist.
Now, do you guys use, like, scents? Because I use different candles for different projects.
I have not done that.
Yeah, I haven't really done it successfully. I feel like I have trouble, like, switching projects in general, so I just don't really try. Like, I'm generally pretty locked in on the thing I'm working on. I would love to get to a point in my life where I can, like, draft something in the morning and then edit something else in the evening. I think I would need to not have a full-time job in order to make that happen.
Yeah, I think that's...
Goals.
Yes.
Yeah, yes. And I think that's going to be a thing that probably we need to figure out when we do get published, because odds are you will be editing something and drafting something else, particularly if you have a multi-book deal.
Ideally, I'll get lots of money and then I can quit my job, so... That would be great.
Exactly. And then it'll be fine.
Yeah, fortunately,
It'll be good.
I don't make lots of money right now, so it would be pretty easy to meet that standard. Easy, quote unquote.
I am very curious to see what will have happened to all of us for season 2. Because, like, when we started season 1, we weren't all agented. We weren't all on sub. And now, look at us. We're all going places.
Yeah, I think by the end, we're gonna be all on sub.
Season 2, we're gonna be
Yeah.
all on sub for sure. Hopefully, at least one of us will have made it out.
I'm gonna manifest for myself that hopefully I'm not anymore. It depends when we record season 2, I suppose. But
I'll have joined you on sub at least, and so will
yeah,
Zilla.
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah,
We'll
sure.
probably go on sub around the same time.
Yeah, that's true.
If you get your edit letter.
Yeah, yeah.
Zilla, what we got for leveling up, my dear?
Leveling up. So I was talking to Anna and Ivy earlier, and for the life of me, I could not remember what I had talked about in previous leveling up. So I wanted to ensure that I didn't go over anything that we've talked about before. However, we have talked a lot about group chats, and we've talked a lot about writing, and I think that the part of leveling up that people, maybe newbie writers, don't consider as much as I think they should is the industry side of leveling up. And I think this is where having the right group chat is like a tool that you should keep in your tool belt. So, as I said earlier, I've been just going on and on about this book, Tradwife by Saratoga Schaefer, and like I finished it last night. It was amazing. If I had known kind of like the reveal and the ending, I probably wouldn't have picked it up. But she did this so masterfully that I was like all on board. So when I was reading this book and I was thinking about the voice and thinking about the editing and thinking about the pace, I was realizing like, hey, I want to look at what this or who this editor is. And I went to Megan, who's another one of our friends, and was like, Megan, this is the book that I would like to emulate. Like, this is the career. And she was talking to me because she's basically my guru of everything industry. She teaches me things. She's a little bit ahead in milestones in terms of writing. And I've just talked about editors. And I feel like without group chats, without friends, like you're never going to know who the right editors are. You're never going to know if they leave their jobs, if you don't have an agent. Like, you really need to lock in, not with people just like at your own stage, but also people ahead of you, people behind you. Like, you really need to cultivate that like circle of trust, right? Mm-hmm. And we always kind of say like, get a group chat for drama or gossip or like tea or whatever you want to call it, just so you can remain professional. And I think that's a whole other reason to make sure you have the right one, because, you know, we talk about agents leaving the industry, we talk about editors coming in, we talk about the transparency between our agents. Like, Alex is very, very different from Kira, very, very different from Lane.
Yeah.
And we, you know, some other people in our small group. And without knowing how they act as an agent, you would never know on the call, right? So like, Ivy, when you were on the call with Kira, was there a moment where you were like, I wish I knew how you did this, or I wish I knew other people, because you were the first one agented out of us?
Yeah.
So it's kind of, you didn't have anything to really balance it against.
Yeah, that is a thing, was I didn't really have anything to contrast because I didn't have any other calls either, was the other thing. So I honestly do wish that I had another call. Like, I probably still would have gone with Kira, but just as a almost a litmus test to see how other agents did it. What would a different sub strategy look like? That was something that I was, because like, you don't know what's normal. You don't know how big of a round is a big round, how much is a small round, how often you should be nudging and things like that. Yeah, you don't know until you know. So now that we kind of have a smaller group and we do talk about those things, I know that my sub round is on the small side. I know that my nudges are normal to aggressive, which I'm fine with. And stuff like that. I also know that I get all my materials back quicker than a lot of people because she has such a small list, which I appreciate. But yeah, when you don't have that comparison, it's just, you kind of have to take it all at face value, and that's interesting. But yeah, I didn't really have anybody else who's agented. I think this is something that benefits from reaching out to other authors represented by that agent and kind of getting an insight into how they work and how they feel about the agent, because everybody is
But
not
do
going
you
to.
trust them? I didn't trust mine. Like, I think they were great people. I think that they didn't lie to me, but like, the agent's not going to send you people who are going to bash them. You know what I mean? Like, so that to
For
me,
me, Kira only had one
well,
other
yeah.
author. I was talking to her before I even had the call, because I knew her from a different server. So I wasn't necessarily, I wasn't asking a ton of questions about like working style or how she felt about it. I was asking more so like, oh, so how many people did you do? And it's things that were a little bit more black and white. I did ask some field questions, but yeah, in the end, I only had one offer, so.
Yeah, but that was the
It
right
absolutely
match.
was.
I love Kira. I am so happy with Kira. So like it is not a bad thing, but I do think if you can have multiple offer calls, that's going to be to your benefit, just as a even just feeling more comfortable with your choice when you're making that, because you've seen different ways that people operate. So I don't know, maybe in a different world I would have nudged some of the agents where I'm like, I definitely wouldn't sign with you over
But you
Kira,
just
but
wanted that
just
comparison.
yeah, because like I know you had a second call and
Mm-hmm.
very, very, very different agents.
Very different. Mm-hmm.
But I think when you had that call, it made you a lot more like, yeah, Alex is a better choice.
Yeah. Like, I knew Alex was the one from my second book. She just didn't realize I was the one yet.
Yeah, yeah.
But like, Anna, so like when you were
She
going
had
through
all the
your offer
calls.
calls, right? Like, how, because I feel like it is very different from like comparing what the agents are saying to you and like
Mhm.
knowing how they actually work in the background.
Mhm.
So like, was there any like question in your mind or any like just talk me through your experience?
Yeah, so for the listeners, I had 4 offer calls, and like
Should have had more, but that's fine.
I was fine with just 4. I really at that point I was like, please no more, because
3 in one day was excessive.
yes, because 3 of them were on the last day. I only gave 2 weeks, like the standard 2 weeks is my nudge period. I could have gone longer. As we've established, I'm a very impatient person, and so for my own mental health, and because I was already happy with the first offer that I got, I was like, we're just going to give the 2 weeks. I ended up signing with the last offer that I got. So yeah, there was obviously like a lot of weighing them together. So before I get into like the calls, just as a quick aside, because we were talking about talking to previous clients, I ended up talking either via phone or actually mostly via email to, just because of time constraints, to clients of 3 of the agents, and every single person was like glowing. So that wasn't really a big factor in my decision. I considered it as more of a gut check to make sure that they weren't like, yeah, sure, this agent's fine, and to make sure that what the clients were saying lined up with like the vibes that I was getting from the agent. So it really was just a gut check for me, because everyone was nice. I cared more about like whisper network rumors than what current clients were saying.
And you cared about publisher marketplace.
Yeah.
Yes. But like neither one of you asked like, hey, what's your weakness? Because I totally asked Alex what her weakness was as an agent, and I asked her clients too.
So I didn't ask that, but I will say I really grilled Lane about working style and like how he works with clients on the offer call. I didn't ask too many questions about sales because I have a publisher's marketplace subscription. The other agents that I had calls with were newer to agenting, so they didn't have as many sales under their belt. Some of them didn't have any sales reported, so I asked a lot more questions about like where they were at with that. With Lane, I was really like, the sales are there, I want to make sure that we would work well together, so I asked a lot of questions about like, his relationship with clients, communication. I asked everybody about communication, although I kind of got the same answers about communication from everybody, so I really was gleaning more about like, how are they literally behaving with me on the call. Some of the agents were more like straight up to the point, some of them were really talking my ear off, and so that's the kind of thing I paid attention for, was like literally what is the vibe I'm getting on the call. But I did ask Lane a lot of questions about working style. And some of his answers were things that were different from the other agents in a way that I really liked. So, for example, and the reason why I just started a new project, even though I already had my Dracula retelling going is that Lane likes to see ideas when they're early to help figure out if they're viable. So I wanted to kind of get into some different new projects so that I could pitch him a few ideas. And that's something that I really like versus writing a whole book and then being like, hey, agent, do you like it? It just works really well for me because I think of my advertising background. I like to pitch and I like to explore a bunch of different concepts before I settle down on one.
That's fair. Now, for the vibes that you got on the call, I want to bring it back to the group chat, right? How have you, and I want you to be honest, how have you compared your agent to others from our friends in our group? And I can start because
go ahead.
I could. Alex has a ton of clients. She is typically very fast at communicating. However, I do hope, and I don't know yet because I'm not on sub, I do hope that she's as aggressive as what she said on her call. And I do want to make sure that I am kind of keeping up on that and keeping tabs because I wanted an aggressive agent, and that's the main reason I picked her.
Yeah, I will say I definitely compare sub strategies. Obviously I haven't gone in submission yet, but that was something, we talked about on the call. And so I know that Lane does pretty small rounds, I think around the same size that Kira does for you, Ivy. So 5 editors.
Yeah.
He nudges pretty aggressively. Yeah, small rounds. And there's people that we know who go on maybe, medium-sized rounds of 12 editors.
Yep, that'll be me.
Yep, there's people who go really wide and just send it to 30 editors at once.
The whole list. Yeah, there's no rounds.
Yeah.
Almost.
I like the small round approach, so I don't know, it just makes sense to me, so. Yeah. It wasn't going to be the deciding factor for me, because for that kind of thing, I'm like, well, I do kind of trust the agent, but small rounds appeals to me a little bit more.
Yeah, so we're doing the small rounds, and I'm very much being like, okay, I trust her. I'm going to let her do what she's going to do, because that was not how I queried. It does drive me a little bit nuts, because I was what I call a shotgun querier, which is if they rep it, I send it. Obviously not doing 2 agents at the same agency or anything like that. The typical things where you don't send them, but I sent a lot of queries. Now, the thing is when it's going into submissions, it's how many of these imprints would I actually want to work with? Would I want to work with a tiny itsy bitsy one? Or do I want to work with one of the fantasy giants because I am a fantasy writer and I really want the ego of that sort of stuff? So with that, it's a little bit okay, I am okay. You guys know who my sub list is. A lot of the fantasy giants are in there. So it's okay, it makes sense to make sure that we're getting that. And when we discussed sub strategy and where we were sending and just doing North America versus UK for now, part of that is designed to get the biggest advance possible because of what average advances are in UK versus US and stuff like that. So it all makes sense. I'm just an impatient monster, and it's really, really hard to be patient. But this is an industry that requires it, so I'm trying to let her do what she does, not question too much. Honestly, all I really want, I just want to know what next steps are, so I know what to expect. So, I emailed, I think during our last episode, I'm like, hey, when is our next nudge going out? Just so I know. So it's okay, I don't need, if I see an email from you before this date, then I can freak out, because it means something has happened. But try not to micromanage too much and just trust that she knows what she's doing. It'll get there. And in the meantime, I'm going to focus on other books.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, if you don't have that trust with your agent, then why are you working with them, right?
Yeah.
You have to know that they know what they're doing. That's why you're a partner. Now I am going to disagree. I want a medium-sized round. There are some.
I wouldn't hate a little bit bigger. Like I said, I would hate a little bit bigger, but I'm trying to be very zen about it.
I think it's because it's so slow, right? But
yeah.
I think for me, I just don't fit very well in the big 5 as easily as I think the both of you do. I think what I write is not as, I mean, it's hooky for what it is, but it's not cross-genre. It doesn't have the romance. There are definitely pieces missing that would draw in a bigger readership, and I'm fine with that. And there are also some indies that I personally just adore and want to work with. So I do think, I do compare, y'all's sub-strategy to mine and, some others, and I know that I'm comparing how agents are sharing information. So one thing I wanted to bring up was London Book Fair just happened in March, and there is one agent who shares editor manuscript wish lists with her clients and trends that have been happening, and I wanted that so bad. So I went into my Discord that I have with all of Alex's clients, and I asked, I was like, are we going to get trends or any analysis from London Book Fair? And it turns out we will, but it takes a couple of weeks to get it all put together. But I'm glad I did that, because had I not been part of our group chat, I wouldn't have even known that I could ask for it. Right? Like,
Yeah.
I wanted that information to inform my career.
What they're looking for. Which seems to be a lot of, like, extreme, either, like, horror, dark, or dark, not necessarily horror, but, like, dark or cozy seems to be the two extremes that we're leaning towards, which is...
And with romance.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're so thrilled about that, Zilla.
I'm like, I love it for everybody else. I love that they're getting it. I just, like, it's just not what I write. So therefore, like, I can't take advantage of it.
No, I think your stuff is... It still has relationships, it's just not romantic relationships. And it hits a different thing, and that's not a bad thing. It's just publishing is very... This is selling, let's have 1 million of it. And, like, your stuff will sell too. It'll just be a different vibe for sure.
Yep. And there's the flip side of the coin where, because everyone wants a genre blend with romance, everyone's writing it, and there's absolutely the readers out there who just want horror. Sometimes that's what I want, even though I love romance. Sometimes I just want to see people die.
Yeah. 100%.
Absolutely.
I don't need romance in every single book.
Exactly.
If it's B plot, like, I'm usually pretty cool with it. But if it's like B trying to be A, no, I'm not super interested.
I will say I don't like when there's a genre blended with romance, so like a horror romance or a fantasy romance, and it's so much romance so that it would almost sit on the romance shelves. That's not...
It's set dressing.
Exactly, where it's like a romance story with a horror backdrop. That's not really my vibe. I like the really strong horror or strong fantasy, but then there's also like a really compelling romance plot in it. That's what I like.
Absolutely.
And less romance is okay
to interweave it.
So, agent behavior that are not our agents. So I know that Jenna Satterwhite just came out with an email. It was like her tea episode, and I subscribed so I could read it all because I'm nosy. But, like, so what happened in this email, or in this Substack, was she was calling out this fancy agent. She never named her. And I'm just assuming that it is a her. I don't think there was ever a pronoun
Statistically speaking, most agents are women.
Yes.
So, like, I feel like it's pretty good guess.
And this kind of comes back to, like, whisper networks and using your group chat, because without having this whisper network, I would never even know that these agents are having strategies like this. And what the email, or what the Substack said, was that there is an agent that Jenna looked up to that will drop a client after a month if they don't sell.
Which is bonkers.
Bonkers. If you know anything about sub, like, a month is a blink.
Yeah.
Especially depending on, like, when you go out.
Yes.
Now, I have assumptions on who it is just because I've been told other things by other people.
It's lining up with some other rumors you've heard.
Absolutely. And this is an agent that I had an R&R with, and an agent that I wanted at one point. And I looked up to her a lot too. But then there's another agent who does the same thing. She will give a 3-week shotgun blast.
Nonsense.
Shotgun blast sub period. If you don't sell in 3 weeks, it's dead. She doesn't drop you, but the book is dead. She doesn't send it back out. But she sends to everyone. And she is a high-selling, very well-respected agent.
Yeah, well, when you throw spaghetti at a wall, some of it's bound to stick.
Yeah, to be fair, like, I couldn't even get her to read me, so...
Yeah, and that's why I asked so many questions to Lane on the offer call about, like, client relationship and like, when a book is considered dead and stuff like that, because that's personally what I didn't want, is I didn't want an agent who was just gonna, like, blast it out there and then call it quits if no one bought right away. Yeah. I'm sure it works for some people. Clearly it's working for that agent that you were just talking about, but he doesn't do that, which I really like. Like, it's small rounds, you know, keep trying until the book sells, even if that means
It's a
pulling to
sniper, not a
revise.
shotgun.
Yes, targeted.
Mm-hmm. So that being said, we haven't talked about contracts.
Oh, yeah. Contracts.
Some of us have contracts for us as like our author career, and some of us have book-to-book contract. And I think from the people that I talk to with the book-to-book contract, they still feel very settled with their agent. So I don't want this to be a this is better than this, but I do want to talk about the differences because they do exist, and I didn't even know before I got the group chat.
Yeah. So I have a book-to-book contract. So are you guys both career?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, so I'll talk about book to book, and then you guys can kind of talk about how career is different. So I have a book to book contract. So I'm with Janklow. Janklow is one of the bigger agencies, to put it kind of mildly. If you look them up on Publishers Marketplace, they have like second most sales after Writer's House. So they are very, very big. Their standard contract is book to book. And the thing that is beneficial about this is it does make it easier to split from your agent if you wanted to split from your agent as an author. Theoretically, it does mean that your agent could just choose not to sign you for the next book. A lot of publishing as a whole, both with publishers and with agents, is kind of handshake agreements. So, like when you get your deal with a publisher, you are not going to get your contract right away. You're going to start editing and doing that stuff based on a handshake agreement while that contract and all those details gets nailed down. Book to book, at least this very much could depend from agency to agency. At least with my agent and my agency, it is book to book, but there is like a handshake agreement that it is a long-term career thing, but you're just not locked in from book to book. This was something I asked Kira about on the call even before I knew kind of what their contract looks like. We did talk about the contract on the call, but she has been very clear that she's happy to represent anything that I write. If there's anything I write that she does not really like, we will work to get it to a stage that we're at. If I write anything that's out of her wheelhouse in terms of what she is comfortable representing, she will work with a co-agent at her agency who is comfortable in that area, or she will just get educated in it. So that was very, very clear. So a book-to-book contract is not necessarily a bad thing, but there is an element of a handshake agreement to it if there is an assumption of it's a career agent, and that's something you would really, really want to clarify in a call. This wasn't something I necessarily had an option for because she was building a really new list, but I would really want to talk to a client, ideally, who had a book die on sub and then continued working with that agent. So that would be something that I would really look for if you have a book-to-book contract, just as evidence that,
And you can ask for that on the call.
Yeah, exactly. As long as they have a list that allows that. But I don't think any agent would necessarily put on a call and be like, yeah, I'll drop you if you don't sell. That's probably not what they would say because they want to sign you as a client. They believe they can make money off your book. But yeah, that's essentially how a book-to-book contract works is. So like I'm going to be sending Kira a new book soon, so we'll sign a new contract for that book. And I think I would have to look at my contract, but I believe it locks us in for a year. There are ways to get out of it early. There's like a cool down period and things like that, but it essentially makes Janklow and Nesbitt my advocate for my book, and they have permission to sell it in all these different ways and territories and all that sort of stuff for the length of the contract.
And that's like another point towards group chat when you bring up like no agent is going to say, yeah, I'll drop you if you don't sell. Because if you have a group chat, then someone can be like, hey, I had a friend repped by so-and-so, and they got dropped because their first book doesn't sell. So, yeah, that's where you can...
The Whisper Networks.
Tap into the whispers and the tea. For me, I had offers for both agents that did book-to-book contracts and that did career contracts, and it wasn't really, like, a big factor in my decision-making, because I don't even remember, like, which ones did which, except for like the first agent I got the call from and the agent that I signed with. But the agents who had book-to-book contracts were all like, like, this is just how the contract is, like, we'll sign a new contract when you have a new book. And then even with the contract that I signed for my agent, which is for a career, I think it said something like, this contract is for the book tentatively titled X and other agreed upon future written works. And then if either party wants to terminate the contract, I believe you just have to give 30 days notice. So I kind of felt either way, if somebody decides the relationship isn't working, you get out of it. And I cared a lot more about, the working style of the agent and reputation and all that stuff. And I cared about sub rights and foreign rights percentage because,
Yes.
like, your standard agent commission for your, like, domestic sales is 15%. That's the amount that the agency gets off of your book payments. And it varies for, like, foreign rights and sub rights. So, for example,
foreign rights and sub rights is generally accepted as 20%, but Anna had a contract that was not 20%.
Yeah, so the contract that I signed is for 20%, which is standard. But one of the offers I got was 30%. And
which bonkers.
Yeah. So I think that had to do with it being like a smaller boutique agency and they worked with external partners. However, Tobias that I signed with is also a smaller boutique agency and works with external partners, and they still take like a pretty standard to low 20%. Some places do 25%, but yeah, 30% was really high, so that was like a red flag with the contract for me.
I'm going to be a little spicy, and I think that also has to deal with the agency head maybe having some whispers about her, and that are not necessarily so beneficial, and it does not surprise me that she would be the agency head that puts in a 30%.
Yeah.
Because what that is to me is both the main agent and the foreign rights agent are trying to cop their full 15% off your work without doing the full 15% of work.
Yeah, or at least the agency, because I believe
yeah,
with all of these commissions, it's like the agency gets the 15%, but then the actual agent will like take away a certain percentage of it, and some of it just goes to the agency at large.
Yep. You're right. Good luck.
Yeah, but I mean that's for them to figure that out internally.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that's a big factor with why agents move agencies is the percentage they get out of that 15% might change.
Absolutely. All right, so for me, I just had to look up my contract percentages because I wasn't sure off the top of my head and I didn't want to say anything wrong. So my domestic is 15, my subsidiary is 20, and my foreign rights is 25 because we do work with outside contacts, and we have to pay them. So I'm pretty much okay with it. And my contract, number one, big secret, I have not signed my contract because our contract girl has been out on maternity leave and she just got back and I'm getting it this week, but I actually haven't signed my contract. So with Ivy saying a lot of it is handshake deals, like, yeah, I finished up my dev edits before I got my contract, knowing that Alex does still want to work with me.
Even with publishing, like, when you sell a book, a lot of it's handshake deals.
Oh, yeah. You don't sign your contract for, like, months.
Yeah, sometimes you just, like, you finish editing the whole book, and then you finally sign it.
Yeah, so I think the difference with my contract is, and I do want to talk about different contracts in a minute, but I don't have a 30-day waiting period. I just have to send in an email saying, like, I'm done, and I'm done that day. Like, ours is super writer-friendly. I think it's because the majority of the agents at my agency are writers as well, so they have been very careful about their contract, and so I'm very, very happy with the contract. Obviously, I don't want to leave Alex. I think she's brilliant, but there are contracts that make you wait up to a year.
There's a contract that makes you pay $500 in order to get your IP back.
I hadn't heard that one. That's pretty wild.
It is the one that we talk about very famously having a really bad contract. I saw somebody talking about the details of it in a sub Facebook group, but yeah, that's the one.
It's wild what some of these contracts have in it. And so one of the questions I asked on the call was if they would pursue putting an AI clause in the contract.
Yeah.
Alex was like, yes, like we can go after like anti-AI things whenever you want.
Mm-hmm.
And I know previously a friend who has a deal and is coming out next month. Or this month. No, next month. It's still March. Her agent was like, we can't put in an AI clause yet because we don't even know how to define it. So it is very, in my opinion, important to ask about AI and where you can put it into contracts.
And this is, to be clear, the contract with the publisher. So asking your agent about negotiating that on your behalf, yeah.
I also asked Alex to put it in our contract because I don't want her using AI.
Okay, fair. Yeah. Okay, I got you.
But like, she was totally cool with it. Like, no big deal because
I think any agent that gets their back up about that is like, okay, I'm not signing with you anymore.
So let me tell you about my second call then. And this is a brand new agent. I was her first ever call, her first ever offer. So like, I think her inexperience here is what kind of shone through. So I asked her about AI and what the clause was. And her response was a little shaky to the point where she was like, we don't do that. We know AI is a part of the world, but like, we don't use it. And she's like, her answer didn't really make a lot of sense. I think it's because she wasn't prepared for the question.
Yeah.
And I hope that's the reason. But it made me uncomfortable enough to where I was never going to send her anything again.
Yep.
And I knew that for a fact. And we have talked about agencies on here using AI, and, publishers have been in the news about it. It's something that you can think about with your contract. You can talk about it with your group chat, things like that. So that was all of the like offer call, like agent stuff. But I want to talk about sub a little bit more in depth here. And Ivy, you're going to have to be our expert.
Oh, God.
For editor responses and timing. So the thing that I heard most recently was that one of the big five was not sending out any responses. The day that I said that, someone in our group got a response from them.
Yeah.
Saying that they were still reading. So that being said, I think it's really important to, even if you have one close group, you have to like reach out a little bit more and kind of see what the broader landscape is like.
Mm-hmm.
Because editor timing, number one, is so slow. But in another one of my discords, they're getting rejections nonstop. So what does that mean? It's kind of like reading the tea leaves. Like, does that mean they're getting read faster? Does that mean they're worse books? Like, I don't know, but I do know these editors are being active. And I think that's just as important.
And then it's rough if you're getting silence, because it's like, okay, what does silence mean? Mm-hmm. But it's interesting because you get the responses off the pitch itself. That was a big thing with Kira's sub strategy, is she doesn't send the full right away. She sends a pitch. And based on that pitch, in response to that pitch, she will then send the full. Because the big thing with publishing is if you send the full to an imprint at any point and they say no, you cannot send it to somebody else in the imprint. It's dead. And it might be an umbrella of imprints. So that's part of the thing. Was we did actually switch one editor because an editor just wasn't responding to emails. So we switched to a different editor at that imprint. So you know that they're responsive because they responded to the initial email. So what does a silence mean now? Because they obviously want to get everything off their plate that they can. So theoretically, silence is a good thing, because if they wanted to reject you, they would have just rejected you. But there is so much silence, and you just try not to think about it because it drives you crazy.
Yeah.
I miss Query Tracker Premium.
I know that they've been in talks about using it for editors. I don't know if I like it, but I kind of like it.
God, I don't need one more thing to look at.
So I agree. It would be very bad for my mental health, but I am just nosy. I'm just nosy. Now, Anna, you and I have not been on sub yet. We are preparing. Does all of the talk about the silence make you nervous, or does it actually like help you? Like feel like, okay, there's no rush?
It helps in that, okay, this is like a me thing, but I feel like I've gotten absolutely nothing done this winter in terms of writing. Even though that's not true, like I finished editing Banshee, which took a long time. I got an agent, but I haven't been able to find my footing and get back into my writing groove. Like, part of that was I took a long break. I took like a very intentional, 6-week break, which I haven't taken that long of a break since I started writing novels. And I'm kind of like, I need to just chill out a little bit so it doesn't bother me that sub takes a while and that there's a lot of silence, because I feel like, as opposed to querying where I was just living in my inbox, always putting in the work of sending queries, always checking Query Tracker, it'll give me space to just let my agent cook and work on something new. So I don't know, it makes me a little nervous, but it doesn't bother me too much because I'm just kind of excited for the next stage and excited to have mental space to work on projects, which is what I always wanted, and that's kind of the point of having an agent, is that they get to handle this for you.
And you can ask for different levels of communicativeness from your agent. So some people, it's like, I don't want to hear anything unless there's an offer. Don't tell me if there's rejections. Don't tell me if there's second reads. Don't tell me anything, because that's just what their mental health needs. For me, I am, tell me everything.
Yeah.
Which means that if there is silence, there is actual silence.
Yeah, I'm probably still gonna say that, like, because I do want to know everything, but at least I just have to look out for emails from one person, right?
Exactly.
Yep. And you don't actually have to do anything to get the response, so
Yeah.
it's like the work is not on you.
Exactly.
You can just go back to being a writer.
They're making 15% off your work. Let them make their 15%. Let them
Yeah.
do the work for it. And you just write the next thing. It's weird advice and not everybody's able to follow it, but like honestly, that is the main thing that's kept me sane through sub is having something else to work on that is even when I went on sub was a fairly decent stage to be in. So like we'll see how I do once that's done and it's out to betas and I have to switch to something else, but like having something else to work on has just been mentally the savior.
Yeah, and I'm actually a little bit closer to Anna. I got like very, very little done over the fall and winter months just because like there was something different about this querying experience. I don't know what it was, but it just like I couldn't do anything. So I have 2 projects that are in very, very early stages, and I'm going to get both of them to Catalyst before I pitch them both to Alex and get her like green light on one of them.
I think because you guys are pantsers, you have to get them a little farther to know what the whole deal is, whereas I could send a whole synopsis for the book and be like, this is what it is.
I can't even write the like mock query letter without drafting some of it.
Yep. So I think it kind of brings us into like the spiraling, the venting, the more human side of like what this industry does to you. Because I do think it's an attack on you most of the time. Great thing about a group chat is you keep it in the group chat. You don't put it on social media. We've talked about this before, but like listen, we have to say it, I swear, like every single episode, like keep it in your group chat.
Yeah, because everything that we're saying on here is just truly the tip of the iceberg of maybe what we think we're allowed to say. And hopefully we don't get in trouble.
But I also want to say, like, we do have messy human emotions, like competition. And I know that there is this common thing that's always said, and like my favorite person in the whole world says this all the time, but we are not each other's competition, and I think it's bullshit. We are 100% each other's competition. There is a finite amount of editors, a finite amount of space, and I can root for Anna all day long and still be jealous as hell and I am. Like, I'm very jealous of Anna. Like, she's beautiful. Like, everything about her writing is just like goals, right? But like, you have to be able to carry both. And I think having a good support system is like part of that.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. Jealousy is a very natural human emotion, and I really like what you do, Zilla, is you call it out when you feel it rather than just kind of letting it simmer.
Yes.
And I think that's healthy. I think that's good, and I've started emulating it because it's like I'm so happy for you, but also I wish that was me. Like,
and I think like it's important because I feel like it builds a little bit of trust. And Anna, obviously I can't speak for you, but like I hope it makes you feel like I am genuine in my support for you, and I hope that it, like, you know, like I can hold both for you, because I do think that you are so talented and so deserving, but like, good God, like if I had that, like, it's the Lane effect, right? And not that I think that your book is any less with a different agent. I think it's still gonna sell so quickly and be so beautiful, and everybody should just pre-order this ASAP. And there is this hierarchy in publishing, and I don't think that it is necessarily the most healthy thing to
pretend it's not there.
Yeah, I just, for me, I need to acknowledge it. I need to sit with that feeling, and I need to like move on, like figure out how to cope for myself and also be there for others. And Anna, I haven't let you talk at all, but like, what is your view on this, like being on the other side of that emotion?
Well, yeah, I do really appreciate it, and it does make the support feel more genuine. I don't know, I feel like your jealousy is very supportive. I'm jealous of you all for like making progress on your edits and being closer to sub than me, because I'm just sitting here twiddling my thumbs, and it's like, yeah, I signed, but like nothing has changed. Like, I'm still in my, oh god, sorry, my cat is just being insane and trying to climb me like a tree.
With publishing, there's always a bigger fish, and the benchmark goalposts always move.
Yeah, but it's kind of like, it's like the same reason that I don't really like doing positivity passes for my work, is that when all you're getting is the positive, it feels fake, and it makes me think about like, what are the things that they hate about this that they're just not saying. So the fact that we can be real with each other, it does make our relationship feel a lot more meaningful.
Aw.
Yeah.
So wholesome.
I wish I had Anna's prose. I wish I had Ivy's banter. Like, I feel like it's so important to acknowledge it in yourself. And honestly, like, it helps you grow too because you know, like, what you'd like to
Well,
emulate.
I wish that I had Zilla's level of pitching and concept skills and Ivy's
Right?
productivity levels. Like,
Oh,
God,
yes,
the
her
things I would do to
productivity.
be able to work on 2 projects at once. Like, I don't even know.
It was hard though. Like I was only doing like my goal was 500 words a day in Sculptor, and it was just so it didn't completely die and lose all momentum while I was doing edits. Like it was.
I can't even do that.
We need to acknowledge I'm also on maternity leave, so I'm not like juggling a job right now.
Yes, you're juggling little tiny humans on like 2 hours of sleep, writing 2 books at once. It's fine. You're superhuman.
I'll accept the compliments. I'm fighting it.
And I think it's also for moments like this, right? It is real, it is vulnerable, and like, I don't think that this career needs to be as isolated as maybe it was in the past. And so, like,
The internet is our friend here.
yeah, find your people, whatever that means for you, but also look for the people who are real and a little bit messy, but not in the professional way, in the I'm a real human going through things way.
Because otherwise you just end up with like passive aggressive nonsense, and it's really annoying.
Yep.
And then you end up with a
All
good
right.
group chat, like on the positive end of things, where you find the people you can be real with, where you can just scream into the void together, and that's really healthy, way healthier than doing it on Twitter. So find your peeps.
Yes.
And when they rip you apart, it's out of love, and you know that for real.
It is, yeah. And you can ask the dumb questions. That's something that's been really helpful to me about group chats, kind of like going, like we've been talking a lot about like editors and agents, but going back to the basics, like when I was starting out writing novels as an adult, I was really like on like book talk, not really posting, but just like watching videos and stuff like that. Actually, when I was younger, I was on this writing forum called Figment. Shout out if anyone knows Figment. I was like 12 doing supernatural roleplay with all my little writing friends. So that was kind of like my first writer group chat. But when I finally found that writer group chat, of which Ivy and Zilla were a part of, it really leveled me up because I had a place where I could just ask the dumb questions and talk shop without the fear of like, oh god, do I want to post this publicly? You know? It's very vulnerable to be like, hey, I don't know what I'm doing in a public video, and I just don't really like to do that. So having a group chat is a great place to, you know, be stupid together.
That really does sum it up.
All right, well, that is my leveling up. If you guys have any other thoughts, now is the time.
I think that's very comprehensive.
That was basically our main topic.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry.
No,
I was just so excited about this.
No, it was a good one. I love this conversation.
All right, so that moves us on to edit letters.
Yes. Okay, so today we're talking about edit letters. What are they? What can they look like? How do we react to them? So I kind of
cry.
Yeah, cry for sure, scream, throw up. I wanted to start off with just defining what an edit letter is. So this is a document typically when you're doing developmental edits. So things that are not on the line level, but like changing the story or fleshing out certain aspects of it. Big picture notes. This is a document you would get from your agent or from your editor if you have a publishing deal or if you hired a freelance editor. I also got an edit letter from the mentorship that I did via SmoochPit, so like that's the one that I will be breaking down today when we get to that part. And it just goes into like various aspects of the book that are recommended to be changed, fleshed out, removed, etc. So that was my definition of an edit letter. First, gut reactions. Is there anything that's like kind of different about the way that you all have experienced edit letters, or does that pretty much track?
I think you had a good definition. It's basically, like you said, it's the big picture changes where it would be pedantic to go through and write it in like inline comments. So it's just an actual letter you get that has, hey, these things need to be changed, whatever those are, rather than going in and being like, let's add a comment here and things like that. Because usually with edits, you work big to small. Edit letter might be an entire book rewrite.
Yep. So to get into it deeper, I wanted to talk about edit letter styles. And I figured we could each like take turns kind of going through the edit letter or edit letters that we've brought to the table today. And maybe we could talk about the differences, like the length of the letters, what kind of things it touched on, whether they were prescriptive or more so, here's the problem, now it's your turn to fix it. Ivy, do you want to kick us off?
Sure. So I was the first one to get this edit letter for like the book that we did because just when things were happening. Although you could have got your Smooch Bit one around the same time because I think that was in October. My edit letter was just over a page. So first one was kind of like, hey, I'm excited to work on this book. Hurrah, hurrah. These are all the things I love about it. These are some things that I think we can essentially do better. So my edit letter kind of broke down into four things. One of them was just a phrase that I used that I didn't realize was also used in Game of Thrones. So Kira was like, hey, we should change this so it's not being too on the nose for Game of Thrones. And then it was broke down into two character edits. So one of them was for my female main character, Talani, and just adding a level of depth to an aspect of her character. So the way Kira phrases her edit notes is as questions. So let me find one and I will read it. I'm wondering if exploring this further and earlier would add an extra layer of complexity to not only Talani's character but also to the story. And then there's some more questions that come off of that. So it's all phrases questions. Like literally every single thing is a question here. The other one was for my villain. So it's or add something with his POV earlier because we weren't getting his POV until 100 pages in, which accurate note. And I did apply that to my new book. And then there's a different thing about essentially making him a little bit less of a stereotypical villain. Example of somebody who works like that and what works for that for a different character. And then there's some different ways that we could add that in. So that was my entire edit letter. One phrasing thing that I needed to change. It only occurred once, but I guess it clocked and I didn't realize it. Two character things, one of which is add a new chapter. And I ended up adding a chapter and a scene. But character edits are a pain in the butt because you need a lot of nuance in character edits. So this was, I actually just rewrote the entire book from the top. Like I didn't necessarily rewrite every single word, particularly if it didn't have those two characters in it. But I went through and I'm a big checkbox person. So I'm like, what can I check off really quickly? That phrasing thing. So I went and fixed the phrasing thing. Gone. I went and I kind of thought about how I wanted to address the villain notes, wrote the new chapter and the new scene, and then I went to the top of my book and I just started rewriting the entire thing with what I was adding for the female main character and for the villain. But I made sure all the parts were in there and then it just smoothed everything out. And that was my edit letter.
Nice. All right, Zilla.
I've had two different edit letters. So I was in a mentorship back in 2023, you guys. I didn't realize it was that long ago, but I was in Right Team Mentorship Program, and my edit letter, I had to write down the stats. It was 18 pages, single-spaced, plus 8 pages of tension notes with examples of my book, examples of her book, examples of other books, and then there were 10 pages romance notes in the same direction. So what I had done was, this is again like my very first book I've ever written. It was like draft 3, right? Like it wasn't ready. And I got a mentor who is a romance writer, and my romance needed a lot of help because I'm asexual and I don't see romance the same as everybody else. So it wasn't coming through on the page. And I don't want to read it to you, but the very first thing that my amazing mentor Janice said was, you are going to want to hate me after this, and that's fine. You do not need to take all of this. This is your book. Tell me to fuck off. Like, but these are my thoughts.
Mm-hmm.
And again, like it was super long. She had resources in there. Everything was single spaced. And I ended up with 10 requests, including from an agent that doesn't request, like 0.05% or something. So I really think that she was the one who showed me how to edit, how to break down like my characters, my world building, my tension, and things like that. And I am forever grateful for her. She is just, I still talk to her. My mentor is amazing. And she's taught me a lot of industry things as well. And then I think that because I had such a comprehensive edit letters, I was able to take everything that I learned and put it into my other books. And I think that that's why I was able to do well in the trenches, relatively until I got my agent. Now, that being said, my edit letter from Alex was like 2 pages, and half of the second page was like, hey, watch these movies. It broke down world building. It broke down characters that, she wanted me to merge 2 characters, which made me touch the whole book. And I don't want to go over what Ivy said because a lot of what she did was very similar to what I did. But both of these letters had a lot of gushing. And I think that can vary depending on the agent that you have or the mentor that you have, because some of them just straight tell you what's wrong and they don't give you resources and they don't give you gushing, and that's fine.
Like, Kira's not very gushy.
Yeah. Alex gave me like 3 bullet points. She was like, I love the hotel, like, whatever. But she's like, you gotta push the scary. And because this is my first horror book, like, that made sense to me. And then I came up with a couple of things that I wanted to change as well. So I added in, like, I wanted to add a scene in for my edits, and I wanted to change a couple of the things that happened in the beginning. So I did that, and yeah, I basically touched both my first book. I think I went into like 6 to 8 drafts before I queried, and then this current book, I just finished my 4th draft. So
I think a good edit letter, you touched on like it making you think of other things you wanted to change. And I think a good edit letter does that, is it sparks other ideas for you in your book that weren't necessarily in there, but you're like, oh, this is another way I could develop this further and stuff like that. I think
Yeah.
that is a sign of a good edit letter, is it makes you think of other things you can do without having to be prescriptive.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree.
So the edit letter that I am looking at today is from my mentorship with Smooch Pit.
Shout out to Kaylee.
Shout out to Kaylee Reed, my amazing mentor.
The goat.
She crushed it, and I would not have the same querying journey without her. She's amazing. So I haven't gotten edits from my agent yet, but I don't think it's going to be in a letter form because we're just doing line edits. So we'll see if he has any other big picture notes that come up, but it will probably just be like a Word document with inline comments or something like that. But Kaylee sent me a 5-page edit letter, double spaced, and I will say she's very verbose in the edit letter, so it wasn't necessarily like a ton of huge changes. It was a lot of like, her talking about the things that she liked in various aspects, some things that she wants me to go deeper on, and some kind of thought starter ideas there. But it was not prescriptive. It was very much like, here's the areas that, this could be drawn out more, or like certain themes that I could improve upon, and then it was up to me to figure it out. And she told me on the call that we had to discuss the edits that she based this off of her experiences working with agents and editors. So to break it down, there was kind of an intro section, just talking about how she liked the book, like an overview of that, and, saying like, hope these edits resonate with you. It's, I could take or leave it depending on how I felt. I tried my best to really like take all of these edits, although there was some that I really spent more time on and some that I felt like I could do a couple tweaks and then we were good. The first section she brought up was the world building, and this was actually like the shortest section of the edit letter in terms of edits that she wanted me to make, but it took me the most time to execute because my book is a historical. I did a lot of research broadly when I was starting to write the book, but then I got to the point where I was like, I understand like how this world works. I'm ready to go write it. And Kaylee was like, oh, actually, I studied medieval Irish history and you could do a lot more here. So I had to go back to the books. I spent like 2 weeks. The first 2 weeks of me executing the edit letter was just me doing research, like a crazy amount of research.
I remember the stack of books.
Oh my god, so many books. But it was totally worth it, and I ended up adding a couple of scenes that like both fleshed out the world building and addressed some character issues. And then I ended up doing like some passes after I finished the developmental edit to add mullets for everybody.
Not the
mullets. The last day of me doing the developmental edit was like, I'm gonna, work in all of the like historical clothing and hairstyle details, and that's when I discovered I needed to give everyone mullets. So that was a whole day of my life. There was a section on characters, just talking about some spots where she wanted me to flesh out the characters a little bit more or like make them a little bit more likable. And those didn't end up being huge edits. Like Ivy, I did essentially, quote unquote, rewrite the book because with developmental edits, I just have to go from beginning to end. But a lot of my scenes were relatively untouched. I really, like, added or fleshed out or, you know, slightly changed a few scenes in order to draw out these character details. It wasn't like the characters were fundamentally changing. And I also added a little bit more to kind of, to support the plot. Not changing the plot, but just making it hit a little bit harder. And then she also had a section at the end kind of just talking about more stuff that she liked and giving some comp suggestions. So that was my edit letter. It was 4.5 pages, not 5, double-spaced. So I think pretty middle of the road in terms of length. And it took me about 2 months to execute. And that was, like, me going pretty fast and furious at it.
I think mine was like a month and a half. I realized I didn't say how long mine took.
Yeah.
But I also go feral on edits. I take forever to draft, but I edit fast.
Yeah, I'm the same way because when I'm drafting, I can only do so much per day and then my brain stops. But when I'm editing, I can kind of just work until the wheels fall off, which I do have to be careful about to avoid burnout.
It's easier to fix something than it is to make something from scratch.
Sometimes it's really hard to fix something.
Yeah, that's true. I don't know. I'm always way faster with edits than I am with drafting. I'm a snail when it comes to drafting.
Well, the thing that I find the most difficult with editing is when I need to add a brand new scene in the middle of my draft.
And you have to put the drafting hat back on. Oh,
it's horrible. And you have to draft something, and like all the stuff before it and after it is so beautiful, and it's seen so many rounds. And then you're trying to like Tetris something together that's like, I know exactly the character arts, I know exactly the plot points I need to hit, I know the foreshadowing. And that, to me, as a pantser, is, like, the hardest thing ever. I would so much rather just be making shit up.
It feels like that drawing of a horse. Where half of it's, like, really beautiful.
Yep, it's so painful.
Yeah, I think for my first edit letter, it took me about 6 months of, like, consistently working. And, I mean, that was an overhaul.
37-page long edit letter or something like that?
And to be honest, like, I loved every word of it. She was so detailed. I cannot express to you, like, how much that helped me. And I don't think I was bad before that, but, like, she really helped me, like, get it to a whole new level of writing.
I think an 18-page query letter would make me cry. I think I would just cry.
I'll send it to you. It really isn't that. Like, it really is like, hey, she broke it down to, like, world building, right?
I would see the page count, and before getting into any of it, I would just cry.
She warned me, but she's also very, like, yappy. Like, she's just a yappy girl, and I love that about her. And then my, you know, the one for Murder Night was... I had a really hard time getting into it, I think, because it was such a shock of, like, hey, I've got an agent.
Yep.
And that took me, 2.5 months, maybe?
You had a very, very big edit to make in terms of character switches, too, and I think you needed some loading time.
Yeah, I think you're right. I did a lot of... I didn't ever do a call with Alex, but I did a lot of calls with my CP, Megan, because she's like, my number one. And I just needed to bounce things before I started.
Yeah. I think you did a call with Kaylee as well, Anna, right?
Yep, she sent me the edit letter, and then so I had like 2 days to process it and kind of read things over, and then we hopped on a call where she basically just went into a little bit more detail about the things that she brought up in the edit letter. And it was just nice to have some FaceTime. That was the only call that we did throughout the mentorship. I know other people had more calls, but we just had the one, and that worked perfectly fine for me.
You guys were on really weird time zones, so
yeah,
it
again,
was
like
awkward.
Yeah, she's in Ireland, so our time zones are weird. It wasn't too bad though, because I'm a morning person, and I think she's more of a night person, so it kind of worked out because we met at like, I think it was like 7 a.m. my time, and it was evening for her, something like that. But I also just, like, work very independently, so we had that one call just to make sure we were on the same page, and then I was off to the races. She was pretty much like, you know, figure it out. It wasn't like, change this scene, change that scene. It was like, here's where we could add more, and it's up to you to figure out the execution. And I came up with some pretty creative solutions, I think.
I think the best edit letters and editors are like that, though. They are not prescriptive, they are descriptive of the problems. And it's the same thing with beta readers. I don't want to know how you would fix this problem. You just tell me you're bored and I'll fix that. Yeah, I think I would be very defensive if somebody was telling me how to fix things rather than kind of identifying problems. Because, like, at the end of the day, it's your name on the book, right? So I don't want somebody who's trying to rewrite my book for me. I want somebody who's going to kind of help me to make the book better.
Yeah, I will say when I was first working through that edit letter, I was like, oh, I wish someone would just tell me what I need to do because it
Yeah.
was so hard. But it was worth it. And I mean, the solutions that I came up with, I don't think anyone else would have been able to come up with for me because I knew what I wanted to do and I knew kind of the avenues that I wanted to explore in the story. But the edit letter gave me really good guidance of where I should focus my attention, especially for the historical research, because she gave me a lot of ideas of like, oh, you could focus on the feelings of the Irish versus the Normans, which is something I dug in on. More clothing and hair details. Something that was brought up in the edit letter that I struggled with and I didn't really work in was like adding more idiosyncrasies that are common to the Irish language, just because that is so far from my area of expertise and I really struggled with researching it. And then I also get in my head of like, well, what is like the language today of what people say versus in literally the 1300s. Yeah. So I really focused in on like politics and nature and like hair and clothing, and I felt like that added a lot more texture. But I wanted to get next into, I think we've touched on this a little bit, feelings around the edit letters. Like, what do you feel when you first get it, from that initial gut reaction to just kind of processing? And do you need to take that time to process, or are you ready to just jump right in?
I can start. I didn't get defensive with it at all because I don't know. Quite a bit of it was stuff we talked about on the offer call. So I was expecting it. Reading it, it was like, okay, no, I see how we could do this. I'd already been thinking about it for like 2 weeks because Kira was my only call. So I thought about it for the whole offer window. So it was more like 3 weeks actually because of how long it took to get the edit letter back. Might have been 4. I don't know. I don't want to check the
So
receipts.
long. Sorry.
I know. So, like, it wasn't that long of a time, but I had been thinking about it and how I wanted to implement it. So there were some details where I was kind of like, okay, I could do this one of two ways. I thought about it for a few days until I kind of decided where I wanted to go. I rubber ducked a little bit with some of my CPs, talking through different options, which honestly, like, was not that helpful. It was, in the end, I did what I wanted to do. I wasn't defensive. I just viewed it as a problem that needed to be solved. I saw how it would benefit the manuscript, and I was planning to let it simmer for longer, the moral of my editing life. And then I started rewriting the book in my head, so I said, screw it, we're going to rewrite it now. So I think I had like 2 days left at simmer, and I was already doing it, which was very similar to what I was doing for Sculptor. Was I was supposed to let it sit for like 2 weeks, and then after 4 days, I was like, screw it, and just started rewriting the book.
Yeah, I got my edit letter on New Year's Eve, which is my favorite holiday, and obviously my kids were home, so I couldn't just like jump right in. The only thing that I was really defensive about, and I talked about this on the call with her, so you know, she was aware that like this was a thing I didn't want to change, and that was my ending. I had a previous experience with an agent who would not request my full because she didn't like my ending.
Based on the synopsis, which is bonkers.
I mean, so she, like, you know, for what it matters, like, she just didn't understand the book. She wasn't the agent for me. But, like, I really love my ending. And I asked her on the call, I was like, is the ending a problem? Is the ending a problem for selling? Because I think, especially, I don't want to speak for the three of you, but I'm going to speak for the three of us. Like, we know that this is a product that needs to sell. And I want to sell. So if the ending is a huge problem, like, I wanted that runway to, like, cope. But no, she loved the ending. She thinks it makes sense for the genre I'm writing in. So when I got the edit letter, I wasn't really surprised about anything. World building has always been my weakest, so there were two, like, halvesy, like, categories there that I needed to work in. So, and honestly, again, it was 2 pages, a page and a half or something, and it didn't have much. I already knew most of it, but I did make myself wait the 2 days, and then I tried to jump in, and then life got a little bit crazy, and I had to take a break again, but yeah, I think it was fine, but I think it took me a couple books to get to being fine, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's definitely revising and doing developmental edits specifically it's its own skill to learn.
Yeah. And separating yourself from the book.
Yeah.
It's hard sometimes.
Yes. This is something I've been complaining a little bit about in a different writing group, is somebody going through and kind of talking about, not as, I haven't been complaining about it, but it's been bothering me, is their book is way too long. Like, it's lit fic, and the draft's gonna be like 140, 150,000 words. So it needs like really big cuts. And this person is talking about, oh, well, I might just have to have some of you read through it and tell me what needs to be cut, what can stay. And I'm like, no, you need to learn how to edit. I'm not doing this for you. And honestly, I find it really disrespectful to your beta readers to be offloading that kind of work to them. Because I know for me, I make sure that my stuff is as good as I can possibly make it on my own before I send it to anybody else. And like, I don't love that. And it's not
And
going to
there
be
are
a book.
resources. There's so many resources
There
for
are
that specific
so
thing.
many resources for developmental editing, and it's like, if you cannot kill your darlings, you need to trunk the book for 2 months and come back to it.
Yeah.
Like, I'm not killing your darlings for you. I'm not doing that work. If that's what you need, sure, but I will not be participating in that process, because it just ticks me off.
That's where my first book was a really big learning experience for me, and I mean, I really intended that whole book to be a learning experience, and then I was like, yeah, sure, I'll try to query it, and then it went nowhere because
Well, you learn about
I
querying
did,
even
and
doing that.
again,
So
I really
Exactly.
wrote it with the intention of like, I want a fun project to work on that will teach me how to write a book, and then I'll write the better book after that. So
and you did.
I did, yeah. And I had so much edits to my first book that was entirely self-inflicted because I feel like I have a pretty strong sense for developmental edits because I can read a book and think about what I would want to be different. Read a lot and watched a lot of videos about developmental editing. So like the first draft, I read it and I was like, this is an absolute dumpster fire. I'm going to rewrite this from the beginning. Wasn't like the most efficient way to do things, but I was also like really stress planning my wedding at the time, and it was just like a fun escape side project. So I spent like 8 months rewriting that, and then I ended up with a behemoth of a second draft that was 140,000 words, and then I did my own developmental edits to bring it down to 114,000 words, which included cutting characters and combining plot lines. And then after I had done that, I went through and trimmed the language. So that was a big learning experience for me, and it actually made me feel very prepared to tackle my edit letter that I got. But, like, to come back to the feelings of receiving an edit letter, I really resonated with the edits that Kaylee mentioned. Some of it, especially the world building, were things that I already kind of knew I had to work on, and I was like, damn it. You know, when you're avoiding something because you know it's going to be hard.
Yeah.
Because when I was drafting Banshee, I was like, yeah, I didn't do all of the world building research that I could because I didn't know like what I would need to research until I had written it. Because again, pantser. There was a couple scenes that I had like really heavily researched. For example, there was like a hunting scene, and I like needed to know kind of how that worked in order to choreograph the scene. But stuff that was more set dressing, I didn't research as much. And I was like, I'll do it later. And then I finished that draft, and I was like, I'm just going to query it. And then I got into Smooch Pit and got all my edit notes from Kaylee. And I was like, well, damn it, it's later. Time to do the thing.
It's later.
Oh, now I hate when it's later.
The time has come.
Yeah. So I was a little bit, like, defensive about it, but I couldn't be too mad because I knew it had to be done. And then some of the other edits, in terms of character and stuff, I didn't think of it before, but I understood where she was coming from because she really got the book. And it was kind of different than getting an edit letter from an agent, because with an agent, typically, I mean, almost all the time, you're going to discuss their vision for the book on the call, because that's how you know if there's someone that you want to work with. Because if I was on a call with an agent and they were like, the ending was too sad, we need to change it, that would be a problem. Fortunately, was not a problem. But with the mentorship, I didn't know what her edits were going to be. I had the edit letter, and then after that we had the call. So fortunately,
can you remind me?
Yeah.
Did you like submit directly to her, or did you just submit to the group?
Yeah. So I with Smooch Pit, you picked 3 editors, or not editors, mentors to submit to.
Mentors. And
I actually did not submit to Kaylee, and I think it's because she just didn't have horror listed. You know, there was only, I think, like 3 or 4 people who had mentioned horror on their bio, so those are the people I submitted to. And so I didn't even think...
She saw the Ireland Banshee thing, and she's like, please, may I have
She
this?
was...
It turned out that it lined up, like, eerily well with Kaylee's interests and experience.
Strengths.
Yeah, well, because her debut is a gothic fantasy, so it is quite similar. Even though mine's horror, it's, like, very similar in terms of vibes.
The yearning is very, very similar.
Oh, yes. Lots of romantic yearning and sad boys. And she also lives in Ireland, like, actually really close to where my story is set. She studied medieval Ireland, and one of the books that I listed as a comp is a book that she loves. So it just, like, lined up really well. So actually, I didn't get requests from any of the editors that I submitted to, but I got a request from Kaylee basically saying, hey, would you be open to having someone read it that you didn't submit to? And I was like, duh, yes, please.
I bet she told them to back off.
Well, we can think
She might
that.
have. I could see her doing it.
Because it was like the day you submitted, too. She was on it.
That's true, yeah, it was like the day after... Well, I submitted at the 11th hour. I think applications closed on, like, the 14th of September, something like that. And then I got the request on the 15th. So it really was pretty quick.
Now, when you, like, I guess both of you guys, when you were getting your edit letters, did you, like, peer at other people's papers and be like, my edit letter is more this or less this or whatever?
Nobody else I really knew had an edit letter at the time. So I shared mine with you guys, but, like...
Yeah.
I wasn't... Yeah. I heard people talking about how long theirs was, and I'm like, oh my god, I'm glad that's not me.
What, you wouldn't have wanted my 18-page edit letter?
I appreciated mine being very to the point.
The only one I compared
That's
it to
fair.
was Ivy's, because I had seen yours. I was just really excited to see an edit letter and have that experience, because previously I had just made my own edit letters, you know? Like, I wouldn't write it up into edit letter form, but all the...
Yeah. You make your list of stuff that you're...
Yeah. All the developmental edits I'd done had been entirely self-inflicted before that. So it felt good to know, like, oh, I actually prepared myself pretty well for this, and I've been editing correctly.
And I think if you're used to taking beta feedback, it's not that weird to implement an edit letter.
Yeah, I wasn't really used to taking beta feedback before. Like, I literally had one beta reader for my first book, and I had some, like, developmental suggestions from that, but nothing crazy. It was like, you know, maybe we could, like, make the romance more realistic here. I mean, I had amazing feedback from my critique partners, but it wasn't developmental on a large scale because they'd read just a chunk at a time, so it would be more like, hey, like, this scene could have more tension, or, like, this character interaction doesn't feel realistic. It was more stuff like that. But then I would be giving myself bigger notes on, like, oh, I really want it to be more creepy throughout, or I want the pacing to be different here, or, like, these characters to be combined, or whatever.
Yeah, you guys have seen my spreadsheet.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. So, that is our feelings on edit letters and how we process it. Anything more on feelings?
I think if you're feeling that defensiveness, you just gotta take the time.
Yeah.
Like, as much time as you need. But
I mean, I took, like, I think a week before I even started diving into research just to kind of process things.
And I think there's a level of imposter syndrome that comes too.
Oh, yeah.
That, like, plays into it. And I feel like for me specifically, like, I have an ego. Like, I think I'm great. Like that's what I have to, like, that's my coping mechanism, right? So when you do that Rapunzel meme where you're swinging back and forth between I'm amazing and I should never have written a book ever. Yes, I feel like you really have to know that that's coming, and you have to figure out a reason to push through. And I think that the three of us are really good about that because, you know, we have a focused prize. Like, we want to be published. Like, this is a product. This is not our, like, passion, love, baby thing that we are whatever.
There are different brains. There's the artist brain that needs to go into crafting it, and then there is the marketing, publishing hat brain you have to put on to, okay, I'm crafting this into a product. And ideally, you can kind of switch back and forth between them as you're making it, but sometimes you need to very distinctly put one on and leave the other one outside.
Yeah, and I feel like I have a problem switching into the artist brain because I am constantly thinking, okay, what in this chapter is going to be, like, the thing that people talk about?
But, like, part of that is still the artist brain, because it's like, how do I keep them moving? How do I keep the reader
Yeah.
invested? And I think that's still artist brain. You're just thinking about the product and
Yeah,
how
definitely
it's
thinking about
going
the
to hit
product.
with the consumer. But
Yes.
yeah, it's the melding of the two. I think if you're just 100% in the artist brain all the time, you are not going to be. You're gonna have some big edits at the end.
Yes. Yes, you
Well, I
will.
think that's where like drafting versus developmental edits is for me, because when I'm drafting, and again, this is something I need to switch into if I need to draft a new scene in the middle of revising, which is really freaking hard. But when I'm
Yes.
drafting, I really try to stay in that artist space. I am, of course, thinking about craft and like what's the tension here? What's the disruption? What plot point am I at? Because that's my process. But I'm
How
really
do we make
just
people care about my characters?
exactly. I'm really just like, having fun with it and like trusting my instincts. And then when I'm revising, I feel like I'm stepping out of it and I'm like a puppet master and I'm very like analytical. So it
Mhm.
is really hard for me to switch when I need to draft something new, and it can take me days to like get into the mode in order to draft like a 700 word scene or something. It feels really sad and pathetic
Yeah.
when you're in the process of it.
I really empathize with that. And like switching from editing brain into drafting brain is such a giant pain in the butt. It's like pulling teeth because you're like, why isn't it pretty? The last one was pretty. I want this one to be pretty.
Yeah,
And it's just a piece of.
and I can't make it pretty when my brain is in that like bird's eye view puppet master mode,
Mhm.
because at that
Yeah.
point I'm not really in that writing flow state. So it's just two different things.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. I get that.
So I wanted to talk a little bit about, and I feel like we've touched on this already somewhat, but kind of the difference between revising something when it's just you, or maybe you're taking beta feedback and you're picking and choosing what to listen to, versus when you have an edit letter that you're executing towards. And I think there's mental blocks that can come up, or difficulties where maybe something feels really hard, and if it was just you editing, maybe you would say, this is hard, I'm not going to do it, versus like how do you push through when the edit letter feels too difficult, or when it feels like, I don't know, like when you would normally want to quit.
I haven't experienced this, so I don't know if I'm the best to speak on it. I think there's a difference between this feels too hard and I am defensive about this. And I think if it's defensive, and particularly when it's somebody who you are in some way like you're looking to collaborate with, so whether it's an agent or an editor, if it's a defensive thing, number one, take the time, think about it. And if you still really don't want to change it, I would send an email or get on a call and talk about like I don't want to change this and this is why. And they're probably going to be willing to figure something else out there, because it might be that it's a different problem and they're trying to. This is why I like them identifying problems instead of the ways to fix it, because sometimes the fix they identify just doesn't work. So identifying a problem gives you a lot of options for how you can do that. I have not had an edit letter where I found it too hard to implement, so I'm not sure necessarily how to speak on
I
that.
think, yeah, and I want to go a little bit deeper into that because I think there's also a difference between this is really hard and I want to quit, because I've never hit the I want to quit button. Now, when I got the 18 pages, like I can say, like I really had to go and get help from Megan and another CP I had at the time to like break it down, because I could not do that on my own. So I think just pulling in your resources, like getting a craft book or like making your list or like whatever works for your brain, right? And mine is just I've got a process. And especially with writing romance, I actually had to pull in another girl and be like, I don't even know what to focus on here. Like, am I focusing on feeling? Am I focusing on sight? Am I focusing on smell? Like, how do you approach this? So I think like crowdsourcing would be something that I do when it's hard.
I definitely have different betas that I use for different
Do
processes.
different
So like
things.
I've talked about her before, but I have a self-pub friend who does self-pub romance, Randy May. She's amazing. Check out her books. She is my go-to romance person. So like I'm about to send out edits for new book, and this one has like it's not like a love triangle, but it's got a slightly more complicated thing.
There are feelings. Yeah.
There's feelings, and that's what I really really want from her, is what she thinks about that, how she thinks I can lean into things more, and I know that's what she's going to give me. I actually completely replotted the Undying Summer romance arc based on feedback she gave me, so that different things were hitting at different times and stuff like that. And I think having people that you can pull in as tools for specific things is definitely very, very helpful.
Okay, so
Yeah.
maybe this is just a me thing then, with like the resistance to writing, or sorry, the resistance to executing an edit letter versus like executing my own edits. Because I felt like, so again, like I've done a lot of self-prescribed developmental edits. I did a ton of them for my first book. I did like a moderate amount of them for Banshee. And I felt like even though I was giving myself big edits, because it felt so necessary in my head, I was like, this is my vision. This is how the book needs to be. It's so clear in my head. Even though it was extremely difficult, like again, my second draft of my first book took like 8 months. I had this like drive to push through. And with my edit letter, again, I really resonated with the edits. Even though they were things I hadn't thought of before necessarily, for like the character edits and stuff like that, I could see where, or like why they needed to happen. But there was something about having an external person telling me what to do that made it feel extra hard. And it wasn't me feeling like an innate resistance, like these edits aren't right. It was just, I don't know, having another person be in there telling me what to do. Not telling me what to do, because again, like I could take or leave these edits, and I knew they needed to happen, but it was like a mental block. And I don't know if this is like I have like undiagnosed ADHD. I don't know if it's part of that, but I do feel like introducing another person to it just made it harder, even though the edits weren't as big of a scale. So maybe that's just a me thing, but that's something I experienced.
What do you mean? What do you mean by harder here? Like, do you mean like you felt more vulnerable, or do you mean like you didn't know what to do?
There was less incentive to implement?
No, there was more incentive to implement. I feel like it was the pressure. I felt a lot of pressure
because you're turning it back into that person, and you're like, did I do good?
Exactly. And when I'm executing edits that I give myself, the only person I'm trying to please is myself. So if I am doing an edit and it doesn't feel right, and I'm just really struggling with it, I could say, you know what, I think this is good. Like, but for the most part, I actually would like really, really work hard on those edits and really like, put it through. But yeah, there's just an extra roadblock of feeling like mentally like I need to do this. And there's other people that are watching me,
Mine was the mixture of characters as well as like I had to world build. World building is always my like weakness, and like turning it back into Alex was like I don't know how many times I've messaged and voice memoed Megan over the past week, but it's like, Megan, is this good? Like, you would tell me, right? Like, Megan, like, please help me with this.
I just made you both pinky promise me that you tell me if anything's ever actually bad. Like,
because I don't want to look like an idiot. I don't want Alex to regret her choice. And I think it really is harder because there is a pressure to it. And I don't know if I have executed it in the way that she envisioned. And I know for a fact that I did my epigraphs very differently than what she wanted, because I didn't like what she said. But like we'll get to that when we get to that. But yeah, I mean, I think there definitely is a pressure there that stalled me a little bit. And I don't think I was as fast and as confident in these edits as I have been like when it's just me.
No, I think that's legit. I know there's definitely some things with line edits where there was a specific word choice thing I kept doing, and Kira really didn't like it. I'm like, but I get it. I like it, but it wasn't something that I was willing to fight her over. So I'm like, I'll just change this to something else. That's not a big deal. But yeah, it's like an element of I need to perform almost.
Yeah. Because you're a professional now.
Yes, exactly. I can't disappoint this person who's taken a chance on me. And I think that's something that we're going to have to all figure out as we kind of get into the published author space, fingers crossed, knock on wood, is artistic integrity. Because again, it's your name on the book. That artistic integrity versus being able to kind of take the advice, because there will be times where it's like, actually no, I don't want to change this, and this would be too big of a deal. And I think for me that's a big thing I would really, really struggle with if somebody wanted me to change things in my world building, in my world, because it's like, well, actually I have more books planned in this world. So if you make me change this, then this book doesn't work and stuff like that. And it's like, actually, this is a thing that's setting up for something else down the line. So we can't change that without effing everything up. So I think that's where I would really, really struggle. And I didn't get any of those notes. So that would be, I think, why I didn't struggle as much.
Yeah, I was fortunate that, again, like, Kaylee really got my book. She got what I wanted to do with it, so all of the notes really supported getting the book to the place where I wanted it to, and I think I would have struggled a lot more, like, a million times more, if I had a mentor who wanted me to take it different places. Or, like, I
Yeah,
knew...
make your ending different.
Yeah, make my ending different, like, amp up the romance a crazy amount. We did amp up the romance some. Again, it's a big part of the book, but it's not the whole story.
Yeah.
Like, it's definitely more of a horror than a romance. But I knew other people in the mentorship who had a lot bigger edits, and they were sometimes faster with those way bigger edits than I was, just because, I don't know, even though I was, like, really nose to the grindstone on it, there was a level of difficulty to...
You had a lot of very pedantic, specific edits.
Yes, I did.
That needed a lot of research, and it makes sense that it would be slow because you were being exact and you were being specific about them so that they were right.
And it's so hard to research that specific period of time because of the English. So thanks, English. Yeah. There's just not a lot of records that remain from 14th century Ireland. Like, I was, like, literally part of the book, literally only 1 or 2 chapters takes place in Armagh, which is a city. Back in the day, it was a monastic town. I don't need to get into the whole thing, but I was, like, printing out, like, archaeological maps and, like, trying to construe, like, what buildings would be where based on, like, ruins and anecdotal accounts. It was such a pain. It was really cool,
This is how I feel about the ships.
Yes.
This is how I feel about the ships. How are they built? Why are things where? What can I change because it's a new world versus what has to be there? All the gunpowder has to be in the hold because it's heavy and so that they don't get shot. Like, it's...
Right. And then you add in your tide charts and it's just...
Oh my god. The amount of... That's one of the things I'm doing on this line edit is making sure all the tides line up with the day that they're supposed to be, and the moons.
Well, I'll be paying close attention, so if you get any wrong, I actually won't notice at all. I truly will not notice.
Yeah, the tides will be correct, and, like, the other thing was adding, because there's 2 moons, it's, you can't follow a normal moon thing. It's, they both have separate cycles when you see them, and science is, I'm sorry, I don't know if it's right, but I made something that I'm gonna pretend is right, and we're just gonna go with them. Like,
it's way more than I would have done.
I watched Scream.
I also watched Scream on the airplane. Yeah, it was great.
And it was great. Yeah. Scream 1 and Scream 2 are the best. I watched those. That was my research. No, I did have to do a little bit of World War II research.
Oh, for research.
And make sure that everything was
fun. Because I was bored on the airplane.
No, you did it for research. Just trust me. I did do a little bit of, like, World War II research to make sure that my town made sense and, like, backstories made sense and things like that. But because, like, Wales is such a small actor in World War II, like, there wasn't a lot, but it was enough to where, like, I could flesh that out a little bit more.
Fun fact, and then I think we'll probably wrap up the edit letter segment, but the number one resource that I used for clothing was a very detailed guide, a 20 or 30 page long guide put together by and for Ren Fair reenactors.
Amazing.
Because it was like they had compiled their own information and resource from primary and secondary sources into a guide that's meant to help people understand. And that made it so much easier for me compared to if I had done all of my own research to put that together. Because, again, the information is very scattered and there's a lot of extrapolating. So you never know where you're going to find useful information.
I'm going to have to dedicate Sculptor to the Animagraphs guy, because he did all those ship animations and, like, literally building them from bones to an entire ship and looking at all the rigging and stuff. And I'm like, you gotta get an acknowledgement at least. Thank you. You saved my life. All right, so let's move into our tea of the day, which at the time of recording, Hachette has just pulled a book that they were planning to release in the US and I believe are rolling it back in the UK. Shy Girl, for being AI generated. So this was my understanding. I have not read any of this. It was a self-published book that was then picked up. It was rolled out in the UK, was planning to be rolled out in the US, and is now being axed because of the AI stuff. So this is something I think we've all seen. That's our TLDR. I have not read any of it. My understanding is that it was pretty freaking obvious that it was AI, from what I'm understanding.
I haven't read it, but I did watch at least most of the viral YouTube video that was like breaking it down and sharing examples. And I don't know, because I think a lot of the examples that were given is just like writing that's not that great, and I think humans are perfectly capable of that. So there was a lot of like repetitive phrasing or very like purple prose metaphors that don't make sense. Personally, my first drafts are littered with those, so I don't know if that like means it's AI or not. I think it's so hard to tell what is AI writing and what isn't, because we all have the same words to use. But I definitely think it's a possibility, and the writer herself did say kind of roundabout, like she had somebody in her writing group edit it, and that person used AI, so that feels to me like some sort of admission of guilt.
That AI is definitely involved, even though it wasn't her.
I'm really not a fan of like the AI witch hunts in regards to like, oh, this phrase was used so it must be AI, but it's definitely like looking kind of fishy. I don't know. I think it's just like a rough situation. I do feel bad for the author, because it sounds like she's had a really bad time with it. Like, of course, if she did use AI to write it, like, huge no-no, but I don't know, man.
She would be
so
having
hard
to pay back all the advances, I think.
Ugh, yikes.
Because it's getting pulled, and it's probably in the contract was there was no AI, so she's likely having to pay back all of the advances for. I don't know about the
I
UK
actually
because some
have
of it's
two
sold.
points to counter that.
Okay.
So Hachette has another author who is a white cis man who has publicly come out saying, yes, I use AI.
Who is
and he
this?
has doubled down. I don't remember the. Hold on, I got
also worth noting that
it's some white
this
guy.
author is a woman of color.
Yes. So this author is a woman of color, and not only that, but like got picked up from Self Pub. So someone from Hachette has come in, decided this is the book. Did they do their own edits? Like, I have a lot of questions here.
I don't think they usually do edits when it's a self-pub thing. Like, they might do some small line edity stuff.
No, they do, because...
Did they do dev?
Carissa Broadbent, yes. I don't know how much you guys know about the premise of the book, but there are some things that needed to be a little bit smoothed over because of what genre it is and how explicit it gets.
For Serpent and the Wings of Night?
Yes, but now I'm talking about Shy Girl. But yes, that was the book that I was talking about with Carissa.
Okay,
or whatever.
But you're saying the premise and things about Shy Girl had to be smoothed over?
Yes. Because it was borderline erotica.
Right. And TradPub doesn't like that.
Yeah.
I'll say the video that I watched that was like basically going into like all of the different phrasing examples that felt AI, it was off of the Self-Pub book. And there was also a lot of like formatting issues, so I would assume that they at least did a line edit.
Or copy edit.
I have to wonder, like, if you're bringing a self-pub book in as an editor, like, you have to have some onus on you.
Yeah.
Like, I don't agree with putting this all on the author.
It should have been caught well before it was ever published, much less
and the
acquired.
house itself needs... they need a stand. Are they going to publish AI books or are they not?
Yeah.
Because they already do, and they already, like, have not dropped this other author, and for me, I don't understand, number one, why we're using AI ever. Like, I just don't get it. But then number two, like, the witch hunts. And, like, how do you prove it? And, like, maybe, like Anna said, like, it is just humans not being great. Like, it just is what it is. But, I don't like it at all because I don't think we have all the information.
Yeah.
Hachette doesn't have they don't have a stance that they've come out with. Other than pulling this book from this woman of color and not from the white man.
And I think it's purely about PR.
Yep.
Because, not to go in a totally different tangent, but, like, ABC just canceled the season of The Bachelorette because of TMZ videos that came out about Taylor Frankie Paul, that she actually already, like, it was horrible video that came out, but that was from like 2023, and she already pled guilty for the stuff that happened in the video.
Abuse.
And they just pulled the season because it was bad PR. Like, they knew about that when they casted her. So it kind of feels like the same thing happening here. Very different things, but like a same instance of like big corporation only feels bad because bad PR is happening.
They only care when it affects their bottom line.
Well, and we just straight up don't know, right?
Yeah.
Like, we just don't have the facts.
And that's the thing with AI writing. We're even kind of getting there with images, because AI visuals are getting so good to the point where like I get fooled freaking all the time. And I hate it. I hate it.
Yeah.
And with writing, it's like, I mean, all the evidence you can kind of give is like, it's if something like lacks substance, or if the phrasing is repetitive, or things don't make sense, all of which can occur when people are just not that good at writing. And I think
I'm repetitive all the time.
I believe in humans' rights to be bad at writing. Like, some of the examples that I saw that were like, oh, Shy Girl has to be AI because of this, would be stuff like unintentional echoes, where the same phrasing is used on page 50 and then it's also used on page 87. I cannot tell you. Like, recently,
Sometimes they do that on purpose.
True.
Yep.
But I was also recently peeking in at my manuscript for Banshee. I forget why. I was, like, trying to pull a quote for social media or something. And keep in mind, I've edited this to death. And 100% written by me, obviously. I found the same turn of phrase used twice on the same page. Like, are you kidding me? So, like,
It's because it's probably good, and we wanted to use it.
Yeah, period. But
my brain definitely finds a word that I like and then uses it over and over again in like 3 pages, and then doesn't appear again at all in the entire manuscript.
Yeah, and I am absolutely guilty of using nonsensical purple prose metaphors, especially in my first drafts, because that's just kind of how I write. And so a lot of the stuff that they were calling out as being like, oh, this is obviously AI, I'm like, I think the writer was maybe just like free associating, you know? Like, I think it was probably poorly edited. I mean, again, if AI was used in the editing, like, that's super bad, and she did say that someone did that, so, like, that's terrible. Yeah. But, yeah, I'm just not a fan of the witch hunts, and I think this is why we just need to just not have AI. Mm-hmm. I don't think it will happen,
kill it,
but I would like to see it killed. And I know Disney recently, like, dropped their AI partner or something like that, so I'm hoping this is just the beginning of people finally waking up to it.
I would love if the bubble popped.
I think it will. Once they start charging people $200 a month to use ChatGPT, it's over.
So, on the topic of the witch hunts, as debut authors, we don't have reader trust. Readers are taking a chance on us if they're buying our books. And, this is, again, with the caveat of getting published. How do we defend ourselves against if somebody ever says, hey, Ivy used AI and here's why? How do you defend yourself against that? What are you thinking about now as we're writing these books in defense of that?
Well, for a while, I was thinking, like, it's gotta be so weird that AI would never write it. However, I think we're not really seeing that with Shy Girl, because it's a book that is pretty weird. It's, like, weird girl lit. It's, like, the girl, like, turns into a dog at one point. Like, so that alone is not enough, because you could still have a weird premise and then have AI write the prose, I guess. For me, I just try to be good at writing. Mm-hmm. And I don't...
I'm so sorry.
Like, literally. So, again, I worked in advertising for 5 years as a copywriter, and a big reason why I left advertising summer 2025 is because they were just, like, all gung-ho about AI. Every agency that I knew of was gung-ho about AI. It was a problem across the industry. Everybody I know that worked in advertising as a creative was having big AI breathing down their back. And for a long time, like, I guess from, like, mid-2023 is when AI first started to be a thing. And then in, I would say, 2024 is when AI started to be able to write. And then they were asking us to use AI in our writing. Mm-hmm. And I would say, no, I don't want to do that. And my defense would be I was just good at writing, and I would turn out better headlines using my own brain than the people above me would turn out using AI. So that was my defense. And I quit advertising because I was just sick of it. But that continues to be my, like, MO as I'm writing novels, is that I think people come to novels for really insightful and interesting observations about the human condition, as well as like good plot and all that stuff. But I think where you can really stand
It's
out,
about being human.
yeah, it is about being human, and AI is never going to know that. And ultimately, the reason that we love real art and not AI art is that it makes us feel things and it's insightful. So I think as long as you're doing that, you're good. But also, if anyone ever accused me of AI, I would say categorically I don't do that, and I would show them my early messy drafts. But I don't think I should have to be able to do that. I think I should just write good.
I'm using it as justification to hoard all of my drafts. Every single one is I can show you how this came from 0 draft to nice polished thing. 100%.
Yeah. I don't think we should even have to defend ourselves. Like, if someone came to me and was like, oh, I think you used AI, show me your old drafts, I'd be like, fuck you. No.
Like, what?
I'd be like, get
Yeah.
a life, loser. So I don't think we should even have to do that.
My hope is that it would be is if those accusations were happening and it would be if it was coming from the publisher.
Yeah, we could hold up in court for sure.
Yeah, where it's like, okay, let me go through with my editor and it's like I can show you every single thing. I wouldn't be making that public. No. And it's like I can show the publisher can then vouch for me. That would be where I would want to be, not like I don't want anyone to see my ugly drafts, but like I would show an editor that and be like, okay, no, I can prove to you specifically that this is not. And then hopefully they can go out and be like, yeah, this is definitely not. We have seen all of these things. We are confident. And fingers crossed they would vouch for me as their author, but that would be.
I mean, track changes is awful in a lot of ways, but like track changes is what's gonna save me, right? Because you can see how many times I've like gone back and like fiddled with a sentence. But I think the other thing that I specifically am going to pursue with my books is I'm going to ask Alex to really fight for an AI clause in my contracts.
Yes. I want one for audiobook narrators and for cover as well as like actual editing.
Absolutely.
Right. And I think that while it wasn't super popular a couple of years ago, like when my friend got her book deal, I think it is becoming more popular now because we've all like decided to take the stance, like we're seeing it in the news that publishers are using it for this or that or whatever, and nobody wants anything to do with it.
Yeah.
And I mean, you can tell on this podcast, like we are all so like
get it out
fighting. Yes, we have so many thoughts about AI and about how it's ruining like the things that we love. And there are ways that we can combat, I think, the accusations, but like Anna said, at some point like the witch hunts have to stop. Like I use M-dashes. I actually have gone back and taken them out because I'm so like conscious of them right now.
I refuse to change anything in my writing based on what AI slop is putting out and people saying, oh, well, M-dashes are a thing. I love an M-dash and I'm not going to change.
I love an M-dash.
I would never change my M-dashes or rules of threes.
Rules of three. It's not this, it's that. I love that.
Right. AI tells are based on real writing and real writers, and I absolutely refuse to change the way that I write in order to try to stay ahead of whatever it's copying now. Because at a certain point, it's going to be everything.
Yep.
And then it's just, do we just not write? Do we have to put typos and everything? So, like...
I already do that, so I'm ahead of the curve.
Yeah. But, like, I do think TradPub needs to differentiate itself from SelfPub because there are the gatekeepers. And I think their differentiation needs to be categorically against AI in written work, in what they publish, in what they do cover-wise, in what they do narrator-wise. Translation, like think it needs to be categorically against it because how else do they differentiate themselves from SelfPub?
Yeah. And I will say, kind of going back to like earlier when we were talking about like calls with agents and how we bring up AI, that's something that I did ask on. Actually, I asked on every call except for the one I had with Lane because I had asked agents like, could we put an AI clause in any publishing contracts? And pretty much the answer I was getting across the board was like, screw AI, and we don't need to worry about that because all the big publishers already have that in there. And so I kind of just wanted to make sure they were on the same page as me. But then before I got on the call with Lane, I social media stalked and I saw like the, anti-AI posts. So I was like, we're good. Like, I don't really need to bring this up. We've covered it. But yeah, it is already like the publishing industry is taking a big stance on it across the board. I am concerned about stuff like with Hachette still having that one author who
Yep.
is using AI, but I really think that this is how TradPub is going to have to, like, you know, claim its turf, is like 100% quality human works. A lot of the allegations or straight up truths that we're seeing about AI writing is in self-pub with authors like the one who had the New York Times feature, who was cranking out like
Yep.
200 books and whatever, was bragging about how she made 6-figure sales across like her 1,000,000 books. And it's like, okay, yeah, because all of them were probably selling one copy because it's bad.
Yeah.
So TradPub is where
And it was Kindle Unlimited, so I think it's based on page reads as well.
So people probably read a couple pages and put it down.
Exactly. You get 5 pages in and somebody realizes it's crap. Or you get the people who just don't think about what they consume and they're the mass consumers. And I don't think a lot of those people are necessarily in the TradPub space because they're just the read everything on Kindle Unlimited.
I don't want to read robot-generated smut. How are they going to know what's hot?
Yeah. Yeah.
I've told you guys about the robo-vacuum erotica that I found one time.
Oh my God.
I have to send it to you.
I have a whole...
That is human-generated because there is no way.
Love that.
Yeah. My one writing group is just obsessed with finding the funniest inanimate object erotica they can, so I see it constantly and I'm just like, I don't get it, but whatever, do you?
But I have a submission for you for that group, so I'll send it over.
Sounds good.
We've got a funny anecdote for when we finish recording.
Any other thoughts on our AI?
Keep writing good and you'll be fine. I think it's very telling that the only things that are getting accused of being AI are poorly written. So just keep writing good.
Yep, absolutely. Well, thank you for joining us for this episode of With Series Potential. We have 2 more episodes left in this season. Next week, we're going to talk about our journeys getting agented. And then for a final episode, we will talk about mentorships. So we hope we see you then. Thanks so much for joining us, and bye.
Bye.